So today I want to talk to you about the Fujifilm XT3. I've had it for a little while now and I wanted to make a video about it because it's such a great camera. I upgraded from the XT1 to this camera. I used the XT1 for a while, just for pictures mainly, but I needed something with better video specs. Just some basic specs about this camera. The price is $14.99 new just for the body. I got mine for $1,300 used. I'm a firm believer in eBay to buy secondhand stuff. It has 26 megapixels, which is more than enough for me. It has an APS-C sized sensor. It shoots DCI 4K in H.265, so it gives it that 10-bit color depth, which is really amazing to push around for video. It shoots 4K 60 frames per second, and it has really, really great autofocus, which I really appreciate and which I wanted in a camera like this. So the autofocus is really amazing. I just want to warn you that this is going to be sort of video-centric video rather than photography. However, I do a fair amount of photography just on my own. So there will definitely be bits and pieces about photography in this video. So I'm currently filming this video on the XT3 with the 35mm f2 lens. It's a great little combo. So like I said, if you want to check out the video on the XT1, I'll link that down below. It's sort of just my thoughts from about a year ago on the XT1 for photography and why I liked it. I do weddings, I do street photography just on my own. I make adventure videos for all the things that I get myself into. I make commercials with the company that I work for, so I'm usually like a second shooter and I'll bring this camera or the Blackmagic, and then I use it for YouTube stuff, which I think it's a really great camera for YouTube. It doesn't have the flippy screen, which would be nice, but for YouTube I think it's a really great camera. So some of my favorite features about the camera, they're mostly video stuff, but there are a few photography features as well that I love. It has the H.265 codec, which is probably my favorite thing about the camera. So you can really push the colors around with the 10-bit color science. And then just the color science in general from Fujifilm is really amazing. I think it's way better than Sony or Canon. I'm not really sure why people are so obsessed with Canon colors. They're just sort of red. But I think the Fujifilm colors are really amazing, and the skin tones look so natural versus oversaturated and sort of red, or like a weird purplish gray color that sometimes you can get out of a Sony camera. Trust me, I know, I've had Sony cameras. It also has HLG, which is the HDR profile. I haven't used that yet, but I hear it's really cool, and I just haven't gotten a chance to test it out yet. But I definitely want to do that. And for photos, it has a ton of megapixels, 26.1, I think. So, you know, that's more than enough for me. I don't really do any large format printing or anything like that. So 26 megapixels is more than enough. Fuji has a decent lens selection, which is also a good thing about it. For photography, I'll get into why I don't think they have great video lenses. They also have really fast autofocus. The Fujifilm XT3 does. Which is another big selling point for me. And even coming from video, I don't really like to use autofocus, but the Fujifilm XT3 has really reliable and fast autofocus, so I don't get too worried about it. And I'm willing to use autofocus with this camera, whereas a lot of other cameras, I won't even touch autofocus because I know it's not reliable. And finally, I think Fujifilm is sort of just different from what everyone else is doing. And that's sort of an important thing to do these days because everyone can just buy a camera and start making travel videos or whatever. But to really stand out, you have to do things that are different and not go with the crowd, which is, like I said, it's really easy to be an imitator and it's easy to copy other people. I mean, we all do it. I'm guilty of it myself. So I just think the Fujifilm system is it's different from what everyone else is doing. So the lenses that I use with this camera, I only have 4 right now, and that is the 35mm f2, which is what's filming me right now. I have that lens, and then I have 2 Canon FD lenses. I have the 24mm f2.8 lens, and I have the 70-210 f4 lens. I use a little Viltrox speed booster with it. It's sort of like a Metabones adapter where you can just throw it on the lens and it, I guess, supposedly opens it up to make it like a full frame camera versus an APS-C sized camera. I didn't really need that, but I thought it was kind of just an added bonus. And then finally, I have the Olympus 50mm f1.4. I've also made a video about that lens, which I'll drop down below, and you can go to that, which I also think is a really great lens, but I'm kind of just getting bored with it at this point. I definitely want to get the Fujifilm 1024 f4 with OIS. I don't have any lenses that have OIS. It really helps a lot of the time. So I think something like a 10-24 would be really great on this camera, especially for like a gimbal or for handheld work. So I'm definitely gonna pick that up at some point, but I think it's like $1,000. So some cons with this camera, it doesn't have IBIS. I don't really know why they didn't put IBIS in the camera. I feel like that would really be great and would really benefit a lot of users of this camera. I would imagine that most people who buy this camera would really benefit from having something like IBIS. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, for me personally, I would love to have IBIS in this camera, especially with using vintage lenses. It really gives the camera such a sort of a strange, like almost film-like quality to it with vintage lenses, but then you can't shoot handheld because you don't have any IBIS, so you have to rig it out, and that's just a mess. So Fujifilm, do IBIS on the X-T4 if you can. I don't know, you make tons of money, you can do it. So the next con, battery life is not that great for this camera. It's better than the previous generation for sure, but I would definitely like to see a bigger battery. The ergonomics of this camera, the hand grip is sort of small. So if they added something like a bigger battery and had to make the hand grip larger, I wouldn't be mad about it because the hand grip's kind of tiny as it is. So definitely a better battery would be great. And then another thing is that the lenses for this camera are really expensive. Now they're really high quality. Even the 16-55 or 18-55, 2.8-4 OIS kit lens, it's a really, really nice lens. I've actually had that lens, but I sold it because I didn't really like how sharp it was. It was way too sharp, and it definitely just looked like a kit lens. But even that lens is really nice, especially on this camera. So that's sort of a reason why their lenses are so expensive. They're just much higher quality than a lot of other lenses and other lens companies. And even this 35mm f2 lens, it's like $400, but it's this tiny little thing, but it's really amazing, and I love it. But they're still kind of expensive. And another thing about the lenses is that not many of them have OIS, which kind of sucks. Again, if they're not gonna have IBIS in the camera, you would think that they would have a decent lineup of lenses that have OIS, but they don't. You would think that the 16-50 f2.8 would have OIS, but it doesn't. So maybe in the next iteration of that lens, they could add stabilization to that lens. I don't know. I definitely think that would be a good thing for them to do, or at least consider, because I would buy it for sure. So what do I want to see in the next generation? Obviously IBIS, a different battery, a couple new lenses with stabilization, and maybe some new picture profiles. I really, really love using the classic chrome profile in Lightroom. Usually when I take photos, I'll take them in, color correct them, and then just throw the classic chrome on, and I usually am pretty happy with them. It has a faded but punchy look. It's a really unique profile. I think they should do maybe some new versions of classic chrome and then maybe tweak their original profiles. I'm not too crazy about like Astia and Provia, although I think they could definitely be better, and they could be sort of tweaked a little bit. And maybe just add new ones, I don't know. But that's sort of my thoughts on the Fujifilm X-T3. It's not really a review, it's more what I think about the camera and how I've shot with it and what I use it for and why it's been a great camera for me. If you have any thoughts on the Fujifilm X-T3, you should drop them down below. I definitely think you should consider picking this camera up. It's a little pricier than most cameras in this sort of range at $1,500. But I definitely think if you find a used one, you can probably get it for about $1,200 at this point, used on eBay. I definitely think you should consider it just for the amazing color science alone and the 10-bit depth. That's more than enough for me to pick it up. And even the generation before the X-T3, the X-T2 was also an amazing camera, but I didn't have it. I went from the X-T1 right to the X-T3. But I've even contemplated picking one of those up as a third camera because, you know, you can't have enough backups in this world. Oh, here's another thing to mention. I use the X-T3, I have a half cage on it, and then I use a little rosette, not a rosette, but like a wooden handle that just screws into the side. It's a cam bait cage, and then I have a cold shoe mount on top of it. It's pretty sweet. It's a nice little rig, and it helps stabilize a bit. Not too much, but it helps stabilize a little bit. So thank you so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, whatever you do on YouTube, I don't know. Check out the other videos I mentioned below. I'll link to the camera. It's not an affiliate because I don't want to sell you things. I just want to do this for fun. So check it out down below. And do you have this camera? Are you thinking about getting it? Do you have a previous version of this camera? Let me know what you think in the comments about this camera. Like I said, it's been an amazing one for me, and I definitely think you should probably consider checking it out if you want to add it to your filmmaking arsenal.
So don't be acting like a fool. Look at you sobbing like a moon, trying to get everybody's cool. Go ahead and jump into the pool. It might just be the time for you to